Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has linked the situation in Hong Kong to the ongoing trade talks with China. Trump has warned the Chinese president from reacting violently to the protests that are unfolding in Hong Kong. He has said that this could potentially threaten a trade deal. Now, Trump has also drawn parallels between violent protests in Hong Kong and Beijing's suppression of pro-democracy protests in Tiananmen Square in 1989. Listen in to what he had to say.
I mean, if it's another Tiananmen Square, I think it's a very hard thing to do if there's violence. And, you know, that I'm president, but that's a little beyond me because I think there'd be, tremendous political sentiment not to do something. So I hope, because I think we're going to end up doing a very good deal. And I think China, by the way, needs a deal much more than we do. But I really do believe that if this weren't part of the deal, possibly something would have happened already a long time ago.
Now remember, armored vehicles and also Chinese paramilitary personnel have been stationed at Shenzhen City, which borders with Hong Kong. The troops' deployment has raised concerns that the Chinese could potentially be considering a military intervention in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, more than 100,000 people continue to hold pro-democracy protests in a peaceful manner in Hong Kong overnight. This protest took place amidst severe warnings from Beijing. The activists and police in Hong Kong have clashed several times over the course of the past 11 weeks. But this was in fact one of Hong Kong's calmest and one of the biggest weekend protests that has been witnessed so far. On Sunday morning, tens of thousands of protesters gathered yet again for a huge rally from Victoria Park to Charter Gardens in Hong Kong. For the first time, the police also banned the Civil Human Rights Front from holding a march from downtown Victoria Park to the central business district. However, the police also granted permission for a rally at a park. And over the past 3 months, the Civil Human Rights Front has organized several demonstrations that has drawn millions of protesters. And also over the past 2 months, marches often have started out peacefully but have descended into violence and chaos, with the protesters clashing with the police, who've used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowd. Now, the unrest in Hong Kong, which began as a protest against an extradition bill, has now morphed into one of the biggest crises that Chinese President Xi Jinping has faced since he assumed power. The protests over the Hong Kong movement have also spread across the world, with rallies taking place in the United Kingdom, Canada and also in the United States. Now, hundreds of Chinese students gathered, for instance, at the Trafalgar Square in London to express their anger against China and for Hong Kong. The rally was organized to condemn the protests in Hong Kong and show support for Beijing as well. And the protesters carried placards that read that Hong Kong is part of China and one nation, one China. The protesters gathered in the Canadian city of Vancouver in support of Hong Kong's protesters, while pro-Beijing demonstrators gathered on the opposite side of the street.
The mob mentality is definitely there. We don't want separation. We love Hong Kong. We love China. We want them to stay together, and we don't want any sort of violence. If they want to talk, we can all sit down and have a conversation like adults do.
We want to tell you guys that the brutality of Hong Kong police and also the government for ignoring the demand of us and so many blood and sweat every single day from Hong Kong people.
And also similar demonstrations were witnessed in Toronto in Canada as well.